But first, we want to bring you the latest on that breaking news out of Michigan. A confusing day of mixed messages between law enforcement and attorneys for James and Jennifer Crumbley, who are now set to face charges of involuntary manslaughter after their son Ethan allegedly killed 4 people and injured 7 others at his high school in Oxford Township, Michigan earlier this week. Now, the Oakland County Sheriff says there is an active manhunt for this couple. Their attorney, though, says that's not true at all. So today we also learned more about what those parents knew in the days leading up to this deadly shooting. Video recovered from the teen's cell phone, including one made by him the night before the shooting. He talked about shooting and killing students the next day at school, and a journal has been found detailing the teen's desire to kill other students. NewsNation anchor Rudabeh Shabazi is here with the very latest on this search. Rudabeh, what do we know so far?
Well, Nicole, the prosecutor says while it was Ethan Crumbley who pulled the trigger, his parents' actions went far beyond negligence and contributed to the events of that day. And now, in a very rare move, the state is seeking to hold them accountable as well. Ethan Crumbley surrendered to sheriff's deputies, but so far, his parents have not. The Oakland County Sheriff making the rounds on cable TV this afternoon, saying James and Jennifer Crumbley are on the run. Late today, their attorney telling NewsNation the couple left town on the night of the shooting for their own safety, saying they are returning to the area to be arraigned and are not fleeing. The Oakland County prosecuting attorney, Karen McDonald, says the semi-automatic gun used to kill 4 people and wound 7 others was purchased legally by James Crumbley, accompanied by his son, 4 days before the school shooting.
Ethan Crumbley's social media posts reveal photos of the semi-automatic handgun, along with the caption, "Just got my new beauty today," including an emoji with hearts. Sig Sauer 9mm.
The next day, the prosecutor says Jennifer Crumbley posted online saying her son was testing out his new Christmas present. Then, she says, days before the shooting, a teacher saw the teen searching for ammunition on his cell phone during class and reported it to school officials. Jennifer Crumbley was contacted through voicemail and email about her son's web search, but did not respond.
Thereafter, Jennifer Crumbley exchanged text messages about the incident with her son on that day, stating, quote, "LOL, I'm not mad at you. You have to learn not to get caught," end quote.
Then, hours before he allegedly opened fire, Ethan Crumbley's teacher saw an alarming note on his desk containing a drawing of a semi-automatic handgun pointing at the words, "The thoughts won't stop me. Help me."
In another section of the note was a drawing of a bullet with the following words above that bullet, quote, "Blood everywhere," end quote. Between the drawing of the gun and the bullet is a drawing of a person who appears to have been shot twice and bleeding. Below that figure is a drawing of a laughing emoji. Further down the drawing are the words, quote, "My life is useless," end quote. And to the right of that are the words, quote, "The world is dead."
James and Jennifer Crumbley were summoned to the school, shown the drawing, and told they needed to get their son counseling within 48 hours, but did nothing, according to prosecutors.
Both James and Jennifer Crumbley failed to ask their son if he had his gun with him or where his gun was located, and failed to inspect his backpack for the presence of the gun, which he had with him. James and Jennifer Crumbley resisted the idea of then leaving the school at that time, of their son leaving the school at that time. Instead, James and Jennifer Crumbley left the high school without their son. He was returned to the classroom.
After news broke of the shooting rampage, Jennifer Crumbley texted her son saying, "Ethan, don't do it." 2 hours later, James Crumbley called 911, reporting that his gun, which had not been locked up, was missing from his house, and he believed his son may be the shooter. Oxford Community School Superintendent Tim Thorne addressed questions about the school's role today.
I want you to know that, there's been a lot of talk about the student that was apprehended, that he was, called up to the office and all that kind of stuff. No discipline was warranted.
And though it is very rare, this is not the first time parents have been charged for their children's alleged crimes. In 2000, a Flint area man pleaded no contest to involuntary manslaughter and was sentenced to 2 years in prison. A 6-year-old boy who was living with him had found a gun in his shoebox and killed a classmate at school. In 2020, the mother of an Indiana teen was placed on probation for failing to remove guns from her home after her mentally ill son threatened to kill students. He fired shots inside his school in 2018. No one was injured, but the boy killed himself. And in Texas, the parents of a student who was accused of killing 10 people in a school in 2018 have been sued over his access to guns. And Nicole, just over half the U.S. states have child access prevention laws related to guns, but they vary widely. Ethan Crumbley has been charged as an adult with 24 crimes, including murder, attempted murder, and terrorism. The superintendent says he did not have a disciplinary record at the school.
All right, so many twists and turns to this. Rudabeh, thank you. All right, let's bring in Phil Andrew, former FBI agent, principal of the PAX Group. Phil, thank you for talking to us again on this. Let's get right to the heart of this afternoon's confusion. So why is the sheriff saying the FBI and U.S. Marshals are hunting for the Crumbleys if the attorney for the family says they left days ago? We saw them appear via phone for Ethan's arraignment on Wednesday. So authorities possibly would have known they left if they did, in fact, tell them that. So explain this miscommunication. What's happening?
I don't think there's miscommunication. I think that the authorities are seeking them. They have not turned themselves in. I think we know that right now. If they had turned themselves into the authorities, wherever they are, because now that there is federal authorities involved, whatever state they're in, they could go to the FBI and turn themselves in. They clearly haven't done that.
And so, Phil, would the FBI already have been mobilized, or is this something where they don't show up, they're not there for their arraignment, and that's when the FBI is called in? How does that work?
Yeah, when you don't show up for an arraignment, but particularly when an investigation involves federal authorities that you're coordinating with, and there is an indication that you are on the run to avoid prosecution, and you may have, it's basically assumed that you've crossed state lines, and then the FBI and the federal authorities can get involved in the manhunt to bring you to that arraignment.
All right, so you have more than 20 years experience with the FBI, former FBI agent. Explain to us what is happening right now. I mean, if the lawyer says, hey, the parents are not missing, as you said, well, they haven't turned themselves in. So is there an active hunt happening right now?
They are in flight to avoid prosecution, is the formal status. And a lawyer's word just simply is not enough to fulfill that. They have to present themselves in person to authorities and turn themselves in.
All right. Phil Andrew, former FBI agent, thank you so much. We appreciate it. All right, we want to stay with this story. April Prayer is a criminal defense attorney. She joins us live now. So, all right, April, would the Crumbleys face any new charges now based on this whole manhunt, confusion, miscommunication, whatever it is?
It depends on what they knew and when. So they can't face escape charges just yet because they were never taken into custody and then ran off. So we'll have to see. It seems like their attorney is saying there's simply a miscommunication. Maybe he has plans to turn them in. I'm not sure what's going on. I haven't really heard of anything like this before. So hopefully, I don't think there'll be any additional charges unless they see that they intentionally fled once they knew that law enforcement was looking for them.
All right. So, okay, well, let's focus in on the charges that they are supposed to be arraigned for, that did not happen this afternoon, stemming from the school shooting. Now, Rudabeh went over this. We don't normally see parents facing charges in these types of cases, but it does happen rarely. Talk about those charges. Talk about what kind of punishment they could be facing here.
So they could be facing up to 15 years in prison for the manslaughter charge in Michigan. Like you said, it is quite rare that parents, and aside from these facts, it normally would cause a very slippery slope if you were to arrest every single parent of every teenager who is charged with a violent crime or a murder. But in this instance, their actions are a bit more egregious since they are saying that they were basically straw buyers for their son, that they actually purchased the weapon, that he announced on social social media that the gun was his, not his father's or his mother's, that then they were told to get him counseling. They didn't. They released him back to the school. They seem to have more knowledge than most parents in a situation where the child simply finds an unlocked gun somewhere in the home. So they are facing up to 15 years for manslaughter charges. It seems as though the state actually can probably file and possibly back up these charges. The most similar case in their state was Jamel Jones, and that's about a 22-year-old case. Jamel James, I'm sorry, about a 22-year-old case. And that person, I think you mentioned before, pled no contest to a gun that was found in the home, and a 6-year-old used it to kill a child. So imagine these facts where the parent actually hands the gun to a much older child, knows that that child is emotionally disturbed in some way, is told to take steps, and then doesn't. But normally, the law doesn't require you to be a mind reader and be responsible for the actions of your child.
Do you think that maybe we'll start to see some changes to laws? I mean, do you think that this is something that could possibly, become more common? Because sadly, we're reporting on school shootings, tragically, quite often.
Yeah, I think we might see some changes in the law, but again, it's like you're requiring this. People will make this about gun laws, and it's really much more about bad parenting. So at what point does a parent become responsible for the criminal actions of their child? And the older the child gets, does that release the parent from responsibility? If the child is 16 as opposed to 6, if they're 15 as opposed to 7, does the requirement change? So I think we may see some changes to the law based on this case and based on similar school shootings.
Yeah, I mean, that great question there. At what point does a parent become responsible for the criminal actions of their child? All right, criminal defense attorney April Prayer, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.